everyone. Welcome to tonight's study session for the city of Casa Grande. Tonight we're going to be talking about along with our partners Arizona Water, the Joint Demand Management Program. Okay.
I hear an echo.
Oh, me too.
Got it, Gloria?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as promised at our last study session, staff has been working very diligently along with our partners, Arizona Water Company, on the development of a water resources plan. And as I mentioned at that meeting, there are a variety of components that are part of that plan. Most importantly is the demand management program, conservation, and I'll let Terry Sue Rossi from Arizona Water explain a little more about the differences in the definitions of the two, and water acquisition strategy and the like. And so we have elected to come back before the mayor and council this evening to share some of the progress that has been made on the demand management program. And I don't want to steal any thunder of Fred Snyder and or Terry Sue, but ultimately, just to kind of lay a bit of context, I know that we've advised the mayor and council of this along the way. Casa Grande had established a committee that was comprised of city staff as well as Arizona Water Company that went to the Sonora Institute, and there's been just a lot of momentum that has come as a result of some of that conference that we participated in. And so I know that Fred Snyder would like to address the council to begin with, and then hand the baton over to Terry Sue as the PowerPoint presentation progresses. So Fred, you want to kick things off?
Thank you.
Oh, there
So
you go.
just want to say good evening, and thank you for allowing us to come in and make a presentation during the City Council study session. I think everybody knows me. I'm Fred Schneider. I'm president of Arizona Water Company, and I've been with Arizona Water for about 13 years. As you know, we've been working very closely with city staff in preparing a joint water resources plan and a demand management program and a water acquisition strategy. This work also laid the foundation for the city's 2030 General Plan update. Today, as Larry mentioned at the October 19th study session, when Paul Tice presented the city's 2030 General Plan, we're debuting the very first component of the water acquisition strategy, which is the demand management program. This has truly been a joint effort between the city and Arizona Water Company. As you will see, for the city and Arizona Water to provide a sustainable water supply for Casa Grande, we need to work very closely together. We need to leverage each other's assets and strengths. At Arizona Water, we see ourselves as the city's water department, and we hope as we strengthen this relationship, you see us as that as well. I want to thank Mayor McFarland. I want to thank Councilman Powell, who's not here this evening, Larry Raines, and Paul Tice, and the rest of the senior management team for their leadership in helping us collaborate and develop this relationship. It's really a unique partnership. Lastly, I want to introduce our Water Resources Manager, Terry Sue Rossi. Terry Sue Rossi, she's the one who's going to be presenting the demand management program. She's been in the water resources field since 1987 here in Arizona. She's worked with the Department of Water Resources. She's worked with at the cities of Peoria and Surprise. She has experience in the private water utilities. She's worked at Central Arizona Project, and in particular the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District and the Arizona Water Banking Authority before she joined Arizona Water Company. In the last year and a half, Terry Sue, along with city staff, have truly worked tirelessly to lay the foundation for sustainable water use in Casa Grande. I'm very proud of all the hard work that the entire team has done that allowed us to get to this point here we are tonight. And with that introduction, I'll turn over to Terry Sue so she can jump into the demand management program. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. And I have to say, having worked for two different cities, City of Peoria and the City of Surprise, that it's a pleasure for me to be back in the municipal environment and working for a city. Woo. It's about building community. It's about building quality of life. And I have always looked at my job as a water resource manager as being the function that creates quality of life in a community. I never want water to become a barrier to your dreams. My job is to make sure that that never happens. So the last time we were here, last time I was here, I gave a presentation on the water resource plan. And in that session, and I'm not sure if Councilmember Corson will remember this or not, but she made a very strong statement that there was not a conservation program in the water resource plan. And I really took that to heart. I went back and I thought, you know, I know that this is a part of why we're thinking. Why didn't it end up in the presentation? And I realized that the reason that it wasn't in the presentation is that my focus has a tendency to be on water supply and not on conservation. And one of the things that Larry wanted me to talk about is, why do we call this a demand management program instead of a conservation program? And I'm going to have to give credit actually to Mr. Powell, who's now sitting down, for why this is in fact the way it is. And I'm going to tell a little story about him as we get into this a little bit when we talk about the workshop that Larry was trying to steal our thunder on, the Growing Water Smart workshop. And I'll tell the story of how we came to be calling this a demand management program. But I wanted to thank you, Ms. Kortson, for pointing out that day, the importance of that. And yes, I really appreciate that. It makes a big difference. And we're really excited about this program. So I'm going to just get into it. I've got 60 slides. I know Paul had 60 slides at the last study session, and he managed to get through it, so I'm confident that we will do that again tonight. So we're going to talk a little bit about the background of the context, kind of the why are we talking about water demand management right now? Why is it now? Why is it important to us at this point of the game? We're going to talk about current conservation efforts, the city's efforts, and our efforts. We're going to talk about a comprehensive water demand assessment that we've recently completed. We're going to talk about then how we took all of these existing and potential conservation measures and we're integrating them into a single demand management program. And then we're going to talk a little bit about schedule, staffing, and budget, and next steps. Oh, and I was going to say, I'm perfectly fine taking questions if you want to take questions. If you want to do questions during it, it'd probably be better if we wait till the end, because I might answer the question as we go along. But if you really have a question that needs to be answered at that time, please feel free to interrupt me. It won't throw me off or anything like that. So let's talk a little bit about the background and context, the why are we talking about this today. So there are really sort of four business imperatives as I see it. One is the adoption of the general land use plan. One is the joint water resource plan that both Larry and Fred talked about. One is the Growing Water Smart workshop that Larry talked about, and that was really a pivotal point for us. That was a turning point for us. And then there's the general regulatory environment that we have to live with right now and the tightening down of that regulatory environment. So let's start with the general land use plan. Now, I understand that Paul was here on the 17th and ran through this, so I'm not going to be I'm just stealing a few of his slides, the ones that I thought were the most interesting and most fewer words. And I'll just go through this really quick just to remind you of the highlights of what Paul had to say. So first of all, how much water are we using here in Casa Grande? So he showed you this slide, and he indicated that we've been using about the same amount of acre feet every year going back to 2010. You can see that from the graphic. The one thing that has changed over time is starting in 2015, we started to use more CAP water. So the green on the top is raw water that we deliver right now to Francisco Grande, to the sports complex, and to the SRP Desert Basin Generating Station. Mm-hmm. And then starting in 2015, we started to store that water underground, the remaining CAP entitlement, and we've gradually been using more and more of it. And the other thing that Paul, I think, mentioned last week was that we were using roughly the same amount of water, but we have in fact increased in population from roughly about 62,000 up to 69,000, or almost 70,000 people. And what that means is that the people on a per capita basis are using the water more efficiently, and he has a graphic about that I'll show you in just a minute. So then, based on the growth projections in the general land use plan, we calculated how much demand we think that the city will need by 2050. So today, the estimate is roughly around 15,000 acre feet, and by 2050, we expect to need about 31,000 acre feet. I'm going to come back to this chart in a minute and show you what the impact on water conservation would be given Paul's goals that he set up in the general land use plan. So how efficient are we? This gets at that GPCD rate. So since 2010, the gallons per capita per day rate in Casa Grande has been going down. So the top number that you see up there is the total water use. That's what we call a total GPCD. That includes all water that we produce divided by the number of people, and then the number of days, and that gives you the gallons per capita per day. So today it's about 198. It was 225 in 2010. And then the two lines down below represent the residential water use. The lower one, which is the light green one, is just the residential GPCD without any HOA use. With HOA use, it's a little bit higher, about 96. We have a tendency to think of that as being included because the common areas are really a part of the residential water use. So in the general land use plan, you might recall that Paul set out 4 goals. One is to implement water conservation measures to reduce the outdoor use of water. One goal is to reduce the daily total water use per capita and the daily residential water use per capita by 15% from the 2020 levels. Another is to maximize the use of effluent as an alternative groundwater in appropriate applications. And I think Kevin is here today, and he's involved in a lot of that activity. And then the last one is to develop additional water supplies to reduce the dependency on groundwater from the PINAL AMA. So Paul also showed you this graphic, and what this graphic represents is if we were to implement his conservation goals, meaning a 15% reduction in total GPCD and in residential GPCD, how much water would we need in 2050? And the answer to that is 26,000 acre feet. And so that's roughly a 4,500 acre foot reduction in the amount of water that we would need. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to come back to this very graphic and talk about what that might mean in terms of money. And you'll see that it makes a huge difference. So the general land use plan, one of the reasons why we wanted to do the demand management program now was we wanted to roll it out at the same time that you all were rolling out the general land use plan so that we could support the adoption of the plan. And it was like blending them together to give the conservation program more strength in starting and also helping with the general land use plan. So the second imperative is the joint water resource plan. And this is a project that Arizona Water Company had been working on before I started in May of 2019. But it was the first project that I was assigned to, and I came out and started working with the city. And the water resource plan, it's not a document per se. It's actually a number of different things. It begins with a GIS, which includes every piece of information we could find that is related to land use and water use, and it's brought into a single environment that we can analyze it. But that's all a virtual environment. And then we have 4 inventories. These are, in some cases, actual reports, and in other cases, it might be a GIS cover, or it's both. So, for example, the existing water supplies is an actual report. Potential water supplies is an actual report. The infrastructure is really in a virtual environment. And then the financial mechanism is an actual report. We also have potential water supplies and existing water supplies. We have elements of those also embedded in the GIS as well. There's also a supply and demand model associated with that. We didn't use that particular model for the demand projections that we used in the general land use plan because it's a very detailed model and we're still sorting it out at a parcel level. But we continue to work on that. And we've developed a water acquisition strategy, and that's an actual document. And I want to talk about that a little bit. So the water acquisition strategy was originally 8 elements, but now it's 9, and includes what you see there: development of a demand management program, quantification of groundwater rights, utilization of reclaimed water, allocation of existing supplies, evaluation of shifting from an assured to an assured water supply designation for the city as a whole, application for a type of CAP water called NAA priority water, conversion of Gila River water, acquisition of a buffer water supply, and protection of existing supplies. And you'll notice that demand management made it to the top of that list But what I will tell you is that this is not necessarily an order of importance. These are all things that are very important, and they all work in tandem. But today, we're going to focus on the demand management program. So then there's the Growing Water Smart workshop, and this is sort of the third business imperative, if you will. And this was truly a turning point. I know for me personally, I think it was for the city, I think it was for our company. And this was a workshop, a 2.5-day workshop that was put on by the Sonoran Institute and the Babbitt Center for Land and Water Policy. So it was 2.5 days. It was hosted by, there was no charge to us to participate in it. And it was amazing. The facilities were amazing. The food was amazing. I've never had that good of vegan food in my life. It was amazing what they prepared with the vegan stuff. 7 cities participated in this workshop, and 3 of them were from Pinal County. We were there, Florence and Apache Junction. There was a lengthy application process, and the mayor really spearheaded that. And I have to say that we were sort of reluctant brides in putting that together because it was so involved. So he had to kind of crack the whip with us. But it ended up being in our best interest to do that. So we had a team, and the team included the city, Pinal County, and Arizona Water Company. These are the participants of the team. And so you'll see that several members of your staff, Councilmember Powell was there, Mayor McFarland obviously was the leader of it, Steve Miller, Fred, and then myself. And we had 2 wonderful facilitators, Ashley Hollinger with Water Resource Research Center and Faith Sternlieb with the Babbitt Center. And they were dedicated to us the whole time, and they were really wonderful at what they did. So what did we do while we were there? 2.5 days, you probably wonder. Well, there were presentations by experts, there were peer-to-peer exchanges, there were amazing social activities. Like I said, the food was unbelievable. And then there were focused participant work sessions. And in those sessions, we produced 2 work products. One is something we call the Water Smart Message, and the other is an action plan. In addition to that, there was an offer for some technical assistance, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too today. So this is our Water Smart workshop message. And this was really, truly a turning point for us as a team, for us as organizations. This is, they took us through an entire process. They taught us how to do this. They had theory behind it. And one of the things that they explained to us is that this activity was about taking blame yourself for the problem and your contribution to the problem. And they were very keen on this because for us to move forward and take the kinds of actions we needed to not externalize the blame, because if we're blaming other people, then we only come up with answers that look like what these other people can do. And so they were very keen on making sure that we did exactly what we were supposed to. And so this is the product of that. And I think it took us 2 different working sessions to come up with it. Everything before the word but is just sort of defining the problem. The but is the blame part, and the therefore is the what we need to do. And I'm just going to read it, and I like to read it whenever we meet because it's really important to just cement this in our minds. Our community farms, businesses need water to thrive, and we risk becoming too dependent on groundwater. But we maintained our agricultural economy on Colorado River water, CAP water, and we grew our communities on groundwater, both of which are expected to decline. Therefore, in order to protect our quality of life, help meet future water needs, and grow our economy, we need to reduce reliance on groundwater, invest in sustainable water supplies, and use the water we have more efficiently. And we've really taken this to heart. I think Paul used this in the general land use plan. I use it for a number of different things. This has become really the beacon for us. Yes?
Exactly is a sustainable water supply?
In water resource management, what we consider to be a sustainable water supply is a water that you can use over and over and over again, that it doesn't deplete. Like a groundwater supply, think of it like your IRA. There's an end to it. So you have a certain amount of money in your bank account, and once you've burned through that, it's gone. That's what groundwater is. A renewable supply would be like your pension or your Social Security check, so it's going to go on indefinitely.
Okay.
So then we did this detailed action plan, and in the detailed action plan, we came up with 4 different goals: supply and demand management, solidify groundwater supply, reclaimed water utilization, and additional water supply acquisition. And this is where I'm going to just pause and tell the story about Councilmember Powell, because we all were working on this, the conservation part of the action plan. And at the end of the day, he said, you know, this really isn't just about water conservation. This is about supply and demand management. And we were all kind of tired and a little grumpy and wanted to go to the social event, and we kind of said, we don't think so. And we all went home, and we thought about it, and the next day we came back, and we realized that he was right. This really was a supply and demand management program. It's not about just conserving water. That's not the final goal. You have to manage the demand, you have to manage the supply, and it's these two things coming together that creates the magic. And we changed this from, I think we had a just conservation program or something like that, and we changed it to supply and demand management. So I cannot take credit for the demand management moniker. That was a result of Dick's thinking and prodding us along, so we can thank him for that. So today what we're going to talk about is that particular element exploded out into the actual conservation program that we're going to be hopefully embarking upon here shortly. And at the time, we were talking about the idea that it could be expanded to other communities in PINAL County, but we soon realized that we needed to put our own oxygen mask on first before we could really do anything like that. So we pulled back on that concept, and since then we've really been moving full speed ahead on our own specific program. And then we were offered technical assistance monies. And this again was we can thank the mayor for this, because he was really the reason that we got this money, and the reason we went to this workshop to begin with. But they told us that we could each get a grant for up to $10,000 to help us kickstart us in our work. And so we put together an application and sent it down there and to the Sonoran Institute, and they approved a $10,000 grant for us to do a public messaging program. And I have Brian Kramer with us here today, because he is actually now under contract with the Lincoln Institute for the $10,000, and he's going to begin doing all the branding. I'm going to give you a little taste of that today, and if you ask me any questions, I'm going to have Brian stand up, because that is way out of my bailiwick. But we're very happy that he's on board, and we're thrilled, and I'm going to show you in a minute why I'm so thrilled about having him. And then the last thing I was going to just mention is that the money itself is coming from an organization called the Arizona Community Foundation. So it's a kind of a complicated structure, but I wanted to make sure you knew exactly where the money was coming from. And the last business imperative is
And I will say the MOU was finished today.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's been very involved.
Yes.
But we're just happy that it's there, and we're happy to work with them. They're great people. We enjoy working with them. So the last business imperative is what I would call a regulatory environment. And so what we're going to talk about is really the two different utilities. So we have our water company, Arizona Water Company is the largest utility in the city of Casa Grande, and then you have your own water system. And so you guys refer to it as Copper Mountain Ranch. Is that how everybody refers to it, as Copper Mountain Ranch? Typically, Copper Mountain Ranch. So your system in 2019 had about 348 connections and delivered about 180 acre-feet of water to it. Under the state's regulatory system, that system is regulated as something called a small water provider.
Can I say that first one is for sale if Arizona Water is interested?
Yeah, I saw there was a for sale sign up on it. So it's regulated under the Small Municipal Provider Program, and basically under that program, you just need to use water efficiently and keep your system losses at less than 15%. It's a municipal utility. As you know, you set the rates for that. It's your water utility. So you're not regulated by the Corporation Commission. We, on the other hand, have about 24,000 connections, and we delivered about 12,000 acre-feet of potable water to Casa Grande and about 2,100 acre-feet of raw CAP water to the entities that I discussed earlier. We are regulated under something called the Large Municipal Provider Program, and specifically under something called a non-per capita conservation program, and our system losses are limited to 10%. We are also regulated by the Corporation Commission. For today's conversation, there's all these programs that you see there are programs that are under the Department of Water Resources, and Arizona Water Company is regulated by almost every single one of those, actually not almost all of those programs. But today, all we're really going to focus on is the non-per capita program, because that's kind of the more, it's the bigger program, it's the heavier program, and so anything that we would do would cover the small provider program requirements too. So what we're saying is that this is a program that can cover both these utilities. It doesn't need to just cover one utility and then have a separate program for Copper Mountain Ranch. We are also regulated under the Corporation Commission, and as far as the BMPs are concerned, and really what they've done is they've just more like enforced what the Department of Water Resources is expecting us to do. So major requirements under the non-per-capita program, we have to do a basic information program, which is very, very basic, but it's basically some conservation brochures, making contact a couple of times with customers, and then we have to implement a variety of best management practices. And the Department of Water Resources has probably 50 or 60 best management practices that they want us to pick from, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to work some of that out. We also have to comply with something they call individual user requirements, which are applicable to things like golf courses and large cooling facilities. And again, we have to keep our losses at 10%, and we have to report water use. So those are the major requirements. Now I'm going to just talk about the various conservation efforts on the part of the city and on the part of the water utility. So as you know, the city has the general land use plan, and we've talked about that a little bit. I didn't mention the piece about the future land use decisions being tied to available water resources, but you might recall in the presentation that Paul did, he talked about where all the certificates of assured water supply are, and he talked about them being in the phase one growth area. And so there was that piece, and then he also talked about being consistent with the Department of Water Resources' fourth management plan. That's where all the conservation requirements are laid out, and increasing water conservation efforts for all water use types, and then the 4 goals that we talked about before. But you already have several BMPs already embedded within your code and ordinances. For example, you've got historic downtown design guidelines encouraging xeriscaping. You have requirements that say water features must use recycled water. You require landscaping that requires low water use plants. You have a maximum of 40% landscaped area that can be turfed, that can be irrigated turf. You require that irrigation systems be efficient, and you prohibit you prohibit water flooding in the street, essentially. And then you also have a conservation-oriented rate structure associated with Copper Mountain. Now, this particular rate structure is not what you'd consider to be a traditional conservation-oriented rate structure. It's a flat rate, but it's a very high flat rate, and it starts at the first gallon of water that you use. It's like, I think it's like $4 for every 1,000 gallons. So even though it's not an inverted block rate, it's a very encouraging, a water-efficient, encouraging rate structure. So some of the things that Arizona Water Company is doing, we also have a conservation-oriented rate structure. It's more of the traditional block rate structure. It protects the lifeline uses, and then it discourages the luxury uses, if you will. We have a program that provides for going out to special events, like a water conservation booth, that kind of thing. We can do community presentations. We have new homeowner landscape information that we make available. We can do residential water audits for our customers in the event that they have high water use and would like to benefit from that. We have a customer high water use inquiry, resolution, and notification process. We do water waste investigations, and we also do distribution system leak detection, meter repair, and replacement program. So in addition to sort of figuring out all the things that we're doing right now, we hired West Water Research to conduct a comprehensive water demand assessment. And they presented that to us on, I think, October 8th, just recently. And they did a wonderful job. They have a new person there. Her name is Claire Madden. She looks like she's 20, but she was just amazing. And I just was so impressed with the work that she did. And she's doing a great job. And so I'm gonna, that whole presentation is an hour-long presentation of itself. So I'm just gonna do the highlights of this. And so what she did was she basically took and analyzed all the customers in Casa Grande, and she figured out the customers in each of the different connection types, so commercial, industrial, single family. And then they researched benchmarks. How much water should those types of customers be using? And then they figured out how many of those connections were exceeding those benchmarks, and then they summed the amount of water that is associated with those accounts, and that's where you get the 2,700 acre-feet of water that's above a benchmark. So for those of you who don't know what an acre-foot of water is, I should probably explain that. That's about enough water for probably 3 to 4 homes in a year in Casa Grande. So an acre-foot is a lot of water. And then the right-hand column is the far column to the right is the average per connection water use. And they added that column after we had the presentation the other day because, or maybe it was actually with the Sonoran Institute, so that we could show that on a connection basis, how much water were people using. So we kind of wanted to see, so for example, if you look at, let's see, I think the next slide actually does this. If you look at these three, on a per connection basis, we've got roughly 50 connections between those three categories, commercial, industrial, and commercial irrigate. And they're using considerable amounts of water, like about 350 acre feet. But if you go to single family, they're using about 0.28 acre feet over their targets, and there's about 2,000 people. So if we want to focus our efforts, we're more likely going to want to spend time with these 50 customers to reduce the water use by potentially up to 1,500 acre feet and the total volume water use above the benchmark. Whereas here we'd have to work with 2,000 people, 2,000 accounts for 556 acre feet. So we're trying to figure out how to use our money and our resources most efficiently. So when we got done when they got done with the analysis, this is kind of what they concluded, that the largest opportunities for conservation are the industrial and commercial customers, and specifically the outdoor irrigation customers. The industrial water users are kind of tricky. So this would be like an Abbott or a Frito-Lay, for example. And we know that a lot of their water use is used for the process itself. So in order to work with them, we'd have to raise the bar quite a bit. And I think what we would find is that there probably isn't a lot of potential for water savings because they're probably already using the water efficiently just by the nature of their business. That doesn't mean that we would exclude them from the process, but we don't think that's where we're going to see the most water savings. The other thing is that all of their water use is, for the most part, going to the wastewater treatment plant, and we don't want to alter the operations of the water treatment plant too much. And all the water that goes to the water treatment plant becomes a new water supply for us, which is effluent. So there's some upsides and downsides of working on conservation with users like Abbott and Frito-Lay. So we're going to try to focus on the outdoor irrigators. And we think that this is why Paul concluded that. I don't know, he didn't need an analysis. Somehow he managed to figure this out in his brain because he knows everything so well. And so he inherently understood that's where we needed to focus. And we in our data demonstrated that was true, and that we found most of the outdoor irrigation is the largest component of our commercial customer water use. And there's also a lot of options for targeting this type of water use, and in particular with the best management practices that the Department of Water Resources would like us to use. And then, so we came to the conclusion that this was really our target area. So then Westwater took and put together a bunch of different potential targets for us, and you can see the list here, and we're just going to highlight some things for you. So for the schools, so for Casa Grande High School, there are 3 locations, the city of Casa Grande 50, the Casa Grande Elementary and Middle School 14, and then the HOAs, we've got 10 locations associated with a company called Associated Asset Management, and 6 locations with University Shadows. So again, what we're looking for is how do we get the most bang for our buck? And so with the Casa, I'm going to show you 3 examples actually. So this is the Casa Grande High School one. So there actually looks to me to be more than the number of counts that they indicated. Oh no, that was just locations. So they have look like about 7 accounts. And you can see Casa Grande High School, Casa Grande Union High School on the left, and the Vista Verde Union High School on the right. Casa Grande Union High School uses about 103 acre feet, does not have a commercial irrigate account with us. Vista Grand Union High School does have a commercial irrigate, and it uses about 142 acre feet. And you can kind of see from the 2 why Vista Verde is using more. But what's most interesting to me about this is that Casa Grande doesn't have a commercial irrigate account, and when you look at how much indoor water use Vista Grande has, you can probably expect that it's going to be about that with Casa Grande Union High School. So you can see there's a lot of commercial irrigate, even though they don't actually have such an account. So we think that they're a good potential target. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the associated asset management properties. And so I think we found 10 of those, and I'm just going to feature these, the top 3. And so at Mission Royale, there was about 67 acre feet. 68 acre-feet across 31 accounts, 39 acre-feet for Tamarin, and 32 acre-feet for Ironwood Villages. So we would work with these HOAs in order to go in and help them reduce their water use by, what's the magic number? 15%. And then there's the city of Casa Grande. And I figure if no one else will agree to participate in the program, we have one captive customer. We actually think people will want to participate. And so Westwater put this slide together, and they wanted me to ask you a question, actually. There's one account that we have called 2200 North Thornton Park, and I will tell North Thornton Road, and that's the one that's using the most in terms of commercial irrigate. And I believe that that is actually the Dave White Golf Course, and that you must be serving water to the Dave White Golf Course in addition to the effluent that's provided.
And there's a part, yeah.
Oh, there's a park
And a
there.
lake.
Okay. So
And
the
a lake.
effluent is going on the golf course, and then you were putting it on the park. And this is where the GIS says the meter is, but you can see the park is down in the southwest there, and actually just directly south of it. There's also the Carmack Nat Park that we're just featuring here today, and that one is the second largest. And then the O'Neill Park. And you can just kind of see the differences in these and see that there's some potential there for some water savings. And we would be working with the city in order to make that happen. And, okay, yeah. So that's what they did in their water demand assessment. And so we came up with this concept of targets, and they came up with a program called the Water Wise Outside program. And so now what we're going to do is I'm going to integrate these together. So our existing conservation programs, our new conservation programs, and bring them all together. And you get to now see my absolute favorite part of this whole program is that stamp. I just love this stamp. And I can't remember now when it was, but the first time I saw this stamp was at the State of the City address. And we went out there, and the mayor and other folks had these really cool T-shirts on with this "Love It Casa Grande" thing, and they were throwing T-shirts at us out into the audience. And I think I pushed a poor woman aside to grab one of these T-shirts so I could have my own T-shirt, because I thought this is the coolest idea. And so when I saw it, I was just sitting there thinking, I got to talk to the mayor, man. We need to use this for the conservation program. And so we talked, and I think he must be like a marketing genius or something, because but before our conversation was over, he'd already planned out like the branding and everything, and he was like, knew exactly what we needed to do. And thank goodness, because I don't know the first thing about that kind of thing, so I really needed that help. But what I can tell you is that logo really turned me on, that concept of that logo. And so I contacted Renee over at the Chamber of Commerce at the mayor's direction and talked about it, and she put me in touch with this young man right here, Brian Kramer. And he has become my latest best friend, and he created that for us. And we took it over and showed it to the city management, and I think we all really liked it a lot and thought that it was a great element for the conservation program. And so I want to talk about this a little bit, because this is a really important part of the entire program. It's really, it's the glue that's going to hold the whole thing together. But first, let me tell you what's in the program. I'm getting ahead of myself. So we've got the ordinances that you already have, the general land use plan, the customer high water use inquiry resolution and notification, which we do, the conservation-oriented rate structures that both of us do, the leak detection and repair and metering replacement program that we all do. And then we have two new elements we want to add in, the Save at Casa Grande and then the Water Wise Outside. Now, bear in mind that this is just the beginning. So we can't roll out every measure we're going to do. It's a little bit like a website. You have to refresh things. So we're starting off with the Save It Casa Grande, that's going to go on indefinitely. And the Waterwise will probably go on indefinitely as well, but we'll add more elements as time goes on. And when we find that some of these elements aren't necessarily working, we're not going to be afraid to stop those elements and start to do something different, because we're all about this actually working. So the Save It Casa Grande campaign. So it's a conservation campaign, and again, we're kind of out of my bailiwick here, so if you've got questions on this, I'm going to ask Brian to come up and answer them. But we feel that the branding is how we're going to establish how critical it is to use water wisely in Casa Grande. We're going to have monthly conservation tips, and we're going to advertise these monthly tips and the available programs through special events, and we're going to advertise those through the social media, and we're going to have messages delivered through these image ads and these videos. I don't even know what an image ad is. Don't tell Brian that I don't know what an image ad is. So,
Terry Sue, large portions of our community are very concerned about water, and when we get some kind of industry or anything, including everybody that sits up here, the first question is where are you going to get the water from? And so these kind of things are good, and I think you've already got a base started pretty good in the community right now.
yes, I agree. And one of the things that we want to do with the the social media campaign is actually make it interactive. So it isn't going to be just us messaging out. We're going to create opportunities for our customers to message us back in. I joke about how we're going to, whoever can send us the best conservation tip gets to go to lunch with the mayor, stuff like that. So we can do a lot of really cool things and have a lot of interaction with the social media. We're also going to be surveying the attitudes about using water wisely, also using the social media. So we're going to establish a base of where are people at right now, and then we're going to test that as time goes on to see that our methods are actually working. We'll have a landing page on the Greater Casa Grande Chamber of Commerce website. That will be connected to the city's website, it'll be connected to our website, and we're going to be using several different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, programmatic display, whatever that is, and YouTube. So this will all come together. It's like a big wrapper. It's like a vessel for the entire water conservation program, the whole demand management program, and everything, any products that we distribute at these events will have the logo on it. All the messages that we put out will have the logo. And then in addition to the logo, what we also want to do is come up with a slogan and then a hashtag. And the slogan is, in this case, this is just an example, but together we can protect Casa Grande's future. But we need to come up with a slogan where we are instilling the value of using our water resources in a wise manner. And so we'll do that, and we'll put together something that looks like this hashtag. I don't know if we can use that one exactly. And then these are examples of how these things appear. And honestly, I couldn't tell you. Are these in Facebook, or what are these?
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Brian.
This is a picture of a drone photo we took at sunset of a neighborhood in Casa Grande looking west. It's got the one of the water towers, which is kind of iconic image in Casa Grande, Abbott, and a pretty sunset. And so the message is only use the water you need. Together we can protect Casa Grande's future. Hashtag Save It CG, which will be kind of the hashtag and the branding for the campaign. And so this is an example of an ad that we would run, to kind of build the brand and establish the message and why it's important to people in the community. And then that would be accompanied by monthly conservation tips and engagement, maybe a contest to share how you're conserving water and, get the community involved that way.
So those show up in Facebook or
Yep,
Instagram?
So the picture on the right is an example of what a Facebook ad would look like.
Facebook.
So that's a single image ad. Another component of the campaign is we're going to be producing a couple videos that explain water conservation and why it's important to people in Casa Grande. So those could be used in the ads as well.
I like it.
I do too.
Yeah, isn't it cool?
We won't get accused of using a file photo.
No, absolutely not, thank you.
It's actually a picture of the city of Casa Grande.
Didn't I see Tabletop Mountain in the background?
And Brian,
did.
It is a beautiful
before we go on,
picture.
are you going to do any type of Spanish language, YouTube video, print material? And of course, Facebook and YouTube or whatever, but is that a piece that you're going to try to?
I think that's a great idea. We haven't gotten to that level of detail yet, but the great thing about YouTube or some of these social media platforms is we could produce messaging and then serve it to those consumers in their native language. So we could do a Spanish component.
Right, okay.
And Brian was telling me that we can target these messages too, so you don't send the same message out to everybody.
Yep.
And there's a very involved back room somewhere where all that happens. But I'm just really excited about it. Now I'll talk a little bit about the WISE water use program, or WaterWise Outside. So this is what we were talking about earlier, where I gave you the examples of the outdoor irrigation customers. And so what we would do is we would target these particular customers, and we already kind of have figured out who they are. And the next step would be to develop water use profiles for each of these targets. And then once we've got a water use profile, and what that is just tells them everything we know about them from a water use perspective and what their opportunities are in terms of potential water savings. And then we would go out and meet with them, and hopefully then they would agree to participate in the program. And then we would do more research to figure out exactly what the right measures were after we had a chance to talk with them in more detail. Then we would implement the program, and we would track the program outcomes and effectiveness. And so that's how that program would roll out. Some examples might be that if we were working with a city, there have been studies that estimate 25 to 45 gallons of water saving per year for every acre foot of turf that's removed. So a 1 mile walking path, for example, is 4 foot wide, could save 1.6 to 3 acre feet of water per year. And then there's also opportunities at parks for potential use of reclaimed water if that's appropriate. As far as the schools are concerned, replacing 1 football field with artificial turf could save 3.3 to 6 acre feet of water per year. And then we could collaborate on a demonstration xeriscape garden in public spaces and provide information panels to educate them in those xeriscape gardens, and then again, some potential use of reclaimed water as well. So now I'm going to shift over to schedule, staffing, and a budget. So I'm going to begin with schedule and staffing. So I've got it broken down by sort of new elements and the ongoing stuff. So the stuff in the middle is stuff that we're already doing, it's been happening, and it's going to continue to happen as we go forward. Right now, up at the top, we're in program development. We're going to launch the program our intention is to launch the program in March of this year, and then the Save It program would start with the launch, and it'll be there to support the general land use plan as well as the launch of the conservation program. And then we begin the WaterWise Outside customer outreach in the fourth quarter of 2021. So by the end of the year, by the end of 2021, we should be going full bore. We're going to, hopefully we're trying to hire a water conservation specialist between now and the end of the year. And that person will then help us with the final stage of the implementation and the launching of the program. And then at the end, sort of middle of 2022, we're expecting to hire a water conservation coordinator and then have a water conservation specialist dedicated to PINAL Valley, dedicated to the Casa Grande area. So that's kind of the big picture plan. In terms of a budget, we've got a budget of about $150,000 between now and the end of 2022. We have $10,000 that we got from the Sonoran Institute that we described earlier. Actually, I think that came from that Arizona Community Foundation ultimately. And then the City of Casa Grande, I think, has agreed to contribute $25,000, and that's actually specifically for the social media campaign, and that's really tied with that grant. And then Arizona Water Company will pick up the remaining 115,000 acre feet, or $115,000. I always get my dollars and my acre feet confused. Yeah, Councilman Powell's like, we'll take it. And then as far as a long-term budget is concerned, we expect to stabilize the staff and the budget probably in around the 2025 timeframe at roughly $330,000. And that would include a full-time water conservation specialist, part of a conservation coordinator, and then the cost of actually implementing the program. So let's go back now to that graphic that Paul had shown you. And this is the one where he shows, what the population is going to be, what the water use is going to be. And if we did water conservation, this is what it would look like. If we're successful in meeting the 15% goal that he talked about, we would save about 4,500 acre feet of water. And so it was 30,442, and with the conservation, it's about 26,000 acre feet. And what that means is that we would, if we had to replace that water supply in today's dollars, just to replace it for 1 year, it would cost us $1.5 million just to replace that supply for 1 year. And so we think that this conservation program is not only the right thing to do, but it is also the most financially responsible thing we could possibly do. So thank you, Ms. Carson. So next steps, we're going to hire water conservation specialists. We're going to implement the Save It campaign. We're going to time it with the general land use plan. And we're going to prepare those water profiles for our potential water-wise outside targets. And we're going to come to the city and ask them to be our first participant. And then when Larry tells us to, we're going to come back to you and we're going to present the entire water resource plan so you can see the other components that we talked about earlier. So with that, I am ready to answer questions. And I got through all 60 of those slides. And
I just want to say
50
thank you, Terry Sue, thank you, Fred, and the Arizona Water Company. You guys have been a great partner, especially the last couple of years we've been working on this. So it's been a long haul. It's great to see it kind of coming together. So thank you guys for everything you're doing.
thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
You know, some of the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
There's things that relate to each other very much. So trees are really the strongest thing right now that the big cities can find to try to erase the temperatures that are rising. And like Phoenix has got a plan to plant all these trees, and they assume that they will reduce the temperature by 8 degrees across the city, and then on unpaved property by 28 degrees from the shade from the trees with canopies. And I guess the thing that I'm getting at is they need to work together. Is if you get a high water using tree, that's not a good thing either. But there's, I know some of these, what you need is one with a big canopy that'll put a lot of shade out over an area. But we have a lot of desert type trees that will do that. And if we can get more people using those, it would certainly be helpful. One other thing I know, when we were doing the fields out at Francisco Grande, the artificial turf has to be watered. Is that, I mean, that's correct, I think, isn't it?
No,
Yeah.
but it's also, a
I
lot
know
of
they'd
water
said
is
there was
used to
a-
cool it down. It gets very, very hot. So a lot of water is used.
in the summer.
I know.
All right, I'm just going,
Yeah, how do they play?
segueing in
How do
here.
the
Yep.
Players playing that.
I'm with you on that one.
It's covered.
Oh.
Matt?
Thanks for using the logo program. or
Yeah.
the stamp. It's great.
I like it.
Great, our branding across. The one question I had is pretty simple, but the water conservation specialist, does that person work for Arizona Water Company, the city, or
Arizona Water.
how's it gonna work?
I think the first one that we're going to hire is going to work for Arizona Water.
Okay.
So, and we're going to hire that person to support the company as a whole, and then we'll eventually have somebody dedicated specifically to Casa Grande.
Anybody else have any questions for Terry Sue?
Just a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm kind
ahead.
of with you as far as, I mean, it is exciting, and I can see how excited you are that this is something that, you know, I think since I've been on council, we've really never put together a plan like this to really push something like this. And so, I think people are going to be interested. I mean, I think we all know we live in the desert. We all know we need to conserve water. So I'm excited about the marketing campaign, the outreach. So I really like it. And I do like that stamp. I think that
Isn't
stamp is
that
really
cool?
cool. So.
Yeah, I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm with the cool kids. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really cool.
It's kind of as a perfect storm. I want, not all parts of the storm were good, but, you know, it really started with the Arizona Department of Water cutting off our certificates of assured water. That really was the impetus, really to get all these groups together and start planning and actually come up with a plan. So this is kind of the culmination of all that effort. Really, it's been going on for the last four or 5 years. So
Good.
it's really good to see, and I really want to thank you guys for helping us get there. So without you, we wouldn't be there. So
Well,
thank
and
you.
the same
I
is
make a
true. We
comment?
wouldn't be there without you.
Good.
Go ahead, Mary.
So one thing that I would really like to see stressed a lot, I mean, this is just really, really great, but, there's always, there's people that go, oh, conservation, ecology, all of this, tree huggers and that. What I really, really liked, and I don't know, Brian, if this was yours, but it said, together we can protect Casa Grande's future. I think that's an awesome phrase. It brings in everybody. It brings in all the people that have always wanted to conserve water and energy and other things, but it also brings in the whole community of saying, it's our future and it's in our hands. And if we don't all work together, we're going to lose. And so I really, really like that phrase, and I'd like to see it really emphasized in the message so that it attracts everybody to the issue and a buy-in as far as that's concerned.
Hey, Terry Sue, one piece that I didn't see in there, and I know we had talked about, was was the potential for incentives.
So
Is
tell me
that-
more.
Well, remember when we were at the Sonoran Institute, they gave a couple presentations on what Colorado had done to incentivize people, let's say, to remove grass from their parkway.
Oh, like a rebate program.
Correct. An incentive, some sort of an incentive program. I didn't see it in there. I don't know if it's not part of the
Las
plan.
Vegas too, I think.
But it might be something we want to look at.
Yeah, I think that, so this was like what I would call first generation.
Okay.
So we didn't want to.
Well, don't forget about it.
Yes, and it's like a website. We need to keep things. We need to keep bringing new elements, take out kind of the stuff that's not working, bring in new stuff, and so and honestly, it was. It's taken a Herculean efforts, as you know, to get to where we are right now. So we had to kind of decide what we were going to do at this juncture. But stay tuned, because there will be more.
Okay, thank you.
And then the other thing I just want to mention is that I don't think that there has ever been a partnership like this, where you have a city and a private utility basically integrating two conservation programs together and taking the assets and strengths of each in order to put together the best program. And so I just think that that's very unique. I think the Department of Water Resources is going to be very receptive to it. And I think we might also be able to package it and perhaps even get some environmental excellence awards for it from the Arizona Forward.
Yeah, and we'll keep our eyes open for grant money too, so
Yes.
additional grant money.
Well, you're the king of grants.
I did have one question. You talked about a buffer water supply. What's a buffer water supply?
So that's a great question. What we see as a buffer water supply is when Paul came and talked to you about the Assured Water Supply certificates, he basically told you guys that that's where all the future growth has to go, because that land is entitled. It's got its 100-year assured water supply.
Okay.
And so we can move forward. If it's in a preliminary plat, it can be final plat. If it's final plat, it can move forward and sell lots, sell homes, and you're good to go. If there isn't a certificate of assured water supply, then there isn't an entitlement for that land as far as water is concerned. So the buffer water supply is about getting a small increment of water that will help those developments move forward.
Okay,
So that's what the
Okay.
buffer water supply is about.
thank you.
Donna?
I just want to finish up. First of all, Fred, thank you, and Terry, I can tell you're excited about it. And I think that, one of the things for Casa Grande is that we haven't had anything like this, and you talked about the incentives and talked about having, that social media aspect. And I think that we all know that one of the reasons our recycling program was really good when we had it was because our kids went home and talked to the
Yeah.
parents about it.
Good point.
And so I think that as we move forward, when we look at how we can collaborate with the schools to get the word out as well, because I think that, that's where we're gonna have a lot of participation in. Brian mentioned the contests and those type of things. The kids will come home and if they don't shame their parents, they will educate them.
I think that's absolutely true.
Right, thank you.
Okay, anybody
This
else?
is a bad year to be in a pandemic when we're working with children, isn't it? I just wanted to say I appreciate the realization that we need to explore acquiring new sources of water. And the lady that we went to have the dinner with that evening, what was her name? I don't know why I don't remember.
Katie Lincoln.
I'm sorry?
Katie Lincoln.
He was part of the
Yes.
Lincoln Institute.
She was very charming, and I remember her concluding remarks saying that we need to go outside of Arizona, or we can't just stay in a small area, that we need to look at venturing out and doing things with water. I thought were really good.
Yes.
And the third I was going to say is I can see, anybody here can see why she's hired by Arizona Water. She's like a book.
She has quite a
You know,
resume.
she can open it up to page whatever and give you how it is. So we really appreciated you leading those discussions, and it was, I think, very rewarding for everybody that attended, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Matt,
I
you
did,
have-
I thought it was very
Matt, did you have a
rewarding.
comment?
No, I'm good
Nope,
now.
okay. All right, seeing none, no other comments then, Terry, Sue, Fred, thank you, guys.
Thank
you
you
to
very
Arizona
much.
Water for everything and
Thank
your
you.
presentation, and staff also. I know staff has put some time into this as well, so thank you guys for tonight. We're going to stand adjourned until 7 o'clock, 15 minutes.
Can we